Hello and welcome to this episode of Health and You. I am Sumi Sukanta. The Surgeon General in the US, Dr. Vivek Murthy, recently triggered a big public health debate when he said that alcohol bottles should carry cancer risk warnings. The remarks have followed growing evidence linking alcohol consumption to several types of cancer. To discuss this, we have two eminent guests, Dr. Ravi Mehrotra and Dr. Sajjan Rajpurohit. Dr. Mehrotra has formerly been the director of the ICMR's National Institute for Prevention and Research in Cancer and is associated with the WHO's International Agency for Research on Cancer. Dr. Rajpurohit is a senior medical oncologist with the BLK Max Hospital in Delhi. Thank you so much, Dr. Mehrotra and Dr. Rajpurohit, for joining us today in the discussion. Dr. Mehrotra, what do you make out of these statements which Dr. Murthy has made, and do you think India should also consider a similar sort of policy?
Well, Sumi, first of all, thank you for having me on your show. Vivek Murthy's proclamation very recently, as probably in the last few days of his position as the Surgeon General of the US, is actually long overdue. Way back in the 80s, the WHO, International Agency for Research on Cancer, has declared alcohol as a grade 1 toxin and a carcinogenic agent. And that was subsequently followed by the National Institute of Health in the US and also a variety of health bodies all over the world, including the Indian Council of Medical Research in India. So this particular warning that, like tobacco, alcohol should also be subject to warnings like all tobacco packs, whether it is cigarettes or it is chewing tobacco, they all, as you well know, for the last many years have got graphic picture warnings. The reason why pictures are there, that even if a person is not literate, he or she will actually see those warnings and hopefully desist from either consuming alcohol totally or at least restrict the intake. So this is long overdue. And it is not only now mentioned in some other countries where such warnings already exist, that consumption of alcohol is not only dangerous but may also kill, but also there are various age limits of people who can actually buy alcohol and hopefully consume it too. In India as well, you might have seen that it is officially not allowed to buy a bottle of liquor until you have attained majority, or it depends on country to country. Some people have 18, some people have 21, and some people even have an age limit of 25. So the question is, although we have some of the best laws in the world, but implementation, at least in India, is lacking in most places. And I will talk about the statistics and how many people have alcohol and what are the problems associated, maybe later on in the show. Thank you.
Yeah. Dr. Rajpurohit, could you please share, how our understanding of the link between alcohol and cancers has evolved? Is there evidence of more kinds of cancers being triggered by alcohol as compared to what we knew earlier?
First of all, Sumi, thank you for being invited on your forum on this important topic. Just to give you a context, even for putting up tobacco as a cancer-causing agent, there was a long time it took, almost I think 2 decades, and initially even doctors did not. They were hesitant because the doctors at that time, they used to feel pride about their cigars. So even doctors would put up their photographs with cigars, and they would not accept. So it took a big study on doctors themselves to prove that tobacco can be carcinogenic. The same thing we have known for long, that alcohol itself is a carcinogen, but yes, because it has been so much prevalent a practice for people, that it became difficult for the doctors themselves to put a brave front and tell that this could be a carcinogen for a person and it's a health hazard. So because being a part of lifestyle, it has often been I would say, not brought up as a big menace, and on the whole emphasis has been only on tobacco or smoking. Now, coming
Yes.
to what health hazards it causes. So, apart from definitely being a carcinogen, we know there are a lot of other health hazards. The common being fatty liver, obesity. Then there could be mental disorders, which could be aggravated, like depression, and hormonal imbalances in especially women. So, all these are important health hazards of alcohol. What we would like to emphasize is that there are at least seven different types of cancer which are directly attributable to alcohol. So, if I talk about fatty liver induced hepatocellular carcinoma, the liver cancer is one of the front runner nowadays as the most common type of liver cancer. So, the hepatitis B and C have got controlled, and over next decade, liver cancers because of alcoholism will become the major types of liver cancers. So, apart from liver cancers, stomach cancer, pancreatic cancer, colon cancer, cervical cancer, head and neck cancers, esophageal cancers. So, these are the most common cancer which are linked to consumption of alcohol. So, it is definitely a carcinogen, and there are definite health hazards of alcohol for the modern generation.
Mention these cancers which are of digestive system or related organs, right? But there are some cancers like breast cancer, for example, which is also being linked with alcohol nowadays. Would you, like to talk about, some of these cancers as well, which are not directly linked to digestive system, but
Yeah.
linked with alcohol?
Yes. So so how breast cancer is related to alcoholism is because of hormonal imbalances, and in general, women who consume alcohol over time tend to gain weight and become obese, and that is how there is kind of a syndrome known as obesity, hypertension, diabetes, kind of a OHD kind of syndrome, which actually increases the risk of breast cancer and even other gynecological cancers like ovarian and uterine cancer. So I would say there will be around 25 to 30% higher chance of having breast cancer in women who are alcoholic compared to people who don't consume.
Yeah, that's very glaring statistics. Dr. Mehrotra, you spoke about, you wanted to talk about some statistics related to cancer and alcohol that you wanted to share with our viewers. Could you please talk about it?
So basically, what I wanted to talk about in a period of 8 years from 2000 to 2017 that we have reports on, little less than 10 years ago, India recorded a 38% increase in per capita alcohol consumption. If you live in Delhi or practically any metro or any major town or even a smaller town or village, the most ubiquitous shops now are liquor shops.
Right.
There is something, obviously, the consumption of country liquor or the local made tadi or desi daru or tharra predominates. And they have a very high concentration of ethanol, practically 33%, above 33% weight by volume. On the other hand, what is known as Indian made foreign liquor, IMFL, is the preferred alcoholic beverage in urban areas, whether it is beer, whiskey, so on and so forth. So the prevalence, especially, is very high as in some parts of the country, including the northeastern states. Mizoram and Meghalaya have the higher prevalence in comparison to other northeastern states, as per the last district level household survey. When you are comparing alcohol consumption in India as compared to other Southeast Asian countries, we are actually higher. Our consumption per capita is 5.7 liters as compared to little more than 4.5 liters in parts of the Southeast Asia. And also, if you look at India between the age of 10 and 75 years, there are 160 million alcohol users with a
Okay. That's
major
huge.
and a marked gender difference. In the sense, obviously, males are number one in this matter. So practically 27.3% of males use alcohol, while 1.6% use are by women. However, these figures may not be 100% accurate because, especially in women, the prevalence of alcohol use is increasing rapidly, and they may not like to talk about it publicly for various social stigma. So then when you look at the problem, there are 57 million problem users and about 30 million dependent users, as the recent report was there. And as per the last National Mental Health Survey, there's a huge treatment gap between alcohol use disorders. The treatment gap is practically 86%. That is, 86% of the people who should be getting treatment, who have a problem with alcohol, do not get this advantage. And this problem is obviously much more in disadvantaged social groups, and they have a greater alcohol attributable harm as compared to individuals from the higher socioeconomic strata. So what I wanted to basically emphasize was that India has a higher problem as compared to the neighboring countries. It is increasing, the number of users is increasing rapidly, whether people are wanting to taking it by peer pressure or because it is socially acceptable, and it is present in all strata of society, more in men as compared to women, and also more in the lower socioeconomic strata where the prevalence of binge drinking or having more than 4 drinks per sitting is much higher as compared to the upper socioeconomic strata. But money is really not the differentiating factor. Anybody and everybody in the country, whether it is male or female, have this problem. And as my colleague Dr. Rajpur talked about, at least 7 cancers, and not only 7 cancers, but all sorts of other disorders which are associated with alcohol are also there.
Yeah. So when it comes to alcohol, one information that keeps cropping up on our timelines when we use social media these days is, for example, some health benefits of cancers, like alcohol, such as red wine, for example, how it can be good for your heart health, all that. But is there actually a safe limit, and also is there actually some benefit that anybody can get when it comes to alcohol? Please, Dr.
Can I take
Raj,
it?
would you like to take up that
Okay.
question? Yeah, you both of you can in fact pitch in with your perspective.
Okay, from my point as an oncologist, I'll say no, no alcohol is safe. That's the accurate statement. But obviously, then sometimes people come with small studies or some anecdotal reports where they will say, okay, red wine is fine, it's good for your heart, it has got antioxidants. So I think that's more for media than actually the truth. So that is my take on red wine and its health benefits. And my colleague can also tell his point.
And Dr. Mahar Mehrotra, because cancer prevention is your area of research, so probably you'll be
Yeah.
in a position to talk.
With, I think this whole red wine story has been around just too many years. And when we go back into the history, is how did this start? This was actually a study from the West. And when we went and who actually funded the industry, the study was actually industry. So the wine industry has funded this whole thing. And there's ample amount of proof to support that now. So, I mean, there is nothing in red wine which better than white wine, which is better than vodka or whatever else. To be absolutely honest, as we talked about, there is practically no health benefit. On the other hand, there are health harms because a lot of wine not only causes uh, problem people having less food and less nutritious food. That this is basically empty calories. So whether it is the amount of antioxidants and the amount of vitamins and minerals and so on is so low that you can probably get it much cheaper and much easier from a variety of other food sources. So I think after having gone through a lot of literature and a lot of studies, scientists all over the world have come to the solution that there is, first of all, no safe limit. Even one drink can be a problem. And another interesting thing, Sumi, I would like to point out that it is not that alcohol is considered to be a macho thing for males only or something. The problem is there is an enzyme called alcohol dehydrogenase or ADH, the levels of which actually metabolize the alcohol, and the levels of ADH inherently genetically is lower in females as compared to males, and that is the one reason why it is even more harmful for females as compared to males, and the side effects and the health harms are much more. I'm not at all trying to say that females should not have it and males couldn't have it. That is definitely not my statement. But what I'm saying is that if one has to have it, and is we live in a free country, and you should make an informed choice. But one definite no-no for women specifically is during pregnancy, because a lot of people do not realize that during pregnancy having any amount of alcohol can be problematic for not only the mother but also for the growing fetus. And that's a different story that many people may not be aware of what is happening. But the first 3 to 6 months is obviously the more crucial for the development of the fetus and for the baby. So that is 100% no. I don't think I would even say a 1% chance you should be taking. So
Yeah.
that is something which, for your viewers, I think we should be very, very clear. And this fact, in the West, people talk about it a lot, although there's a problem. But in India, many people do not even know about this.
Yeah. So going by our experiences, we all know that whoever is having alcohol is definitely not thinking about health benefits when they are having alcohol. They have something else in mind. The second part of my question was, is there whether there is a safe limit of alcohol? Can you reduce or probably, cut your risk of having cancer if you maintain that limit? Dr. Raj Purohit, would you like to take up that question?
To be honest, I would be happy if I could put up a mark at that. This is a safe limit. But once you
There is
get
no.
into a habit, then I don't think there's any safe limit. So medically, if I have to tell you as a specialist, there is no safe limit to alcohol. I think this needs to be studied more. But whatever evidence we have today, I don't think there's any safe limit, which is where we can say no, alcohol is absolutely safe at till this limit for the health.
Okay. Dr. Mehrotra, because cancer prevention is a major area of what you do, uh, you know, do we know by our experiences and also evidences by now that, smoking warnings, signs on smoking, on cigarettes and smokeless tobacco, do they work? And if similar kind of signs are put on the, alcohol bottles, will it actually have any impact as such?
Very pertinent point, Sumi. Um, do graphic health warnings work or not on tobacco packs, at least? Well, there is evidence that they do work, but definitely not work as much as they should.
Mhm.
Very recently, I was somewhere in the market and I found that one person is going and asking for a pack of cigarettes. He would just immediately put his hand on the pack, so the warnings are actually hidden, and they
Covered.
all know it. So you know what the danger is. You know that if you jump from the 10th story of a building, you might either break all your bones or you might even die. But if you prefer to ignore it, obviously nothing is going to work. So, as far as tobacco is concerned, because that is one area of our interest and research, and obviously the number of tobacco users is very high, although percentage-wise it is going down in India, but overall, because of our population, both in the youth as well as the adults, the numbers are strikingly high. I think we are the second highest after China, as can be understood. So they do work, but whether they work 5% or 2%, I really don't think we have the data for that. The other story is if you look at the history of graphic warnings in India, as Dr. Raj was also mentioning, it took a very, very long time for us to get those graphic warnings. Initially, you might remember there was just one line saying tobacco is injurious. Then the sudden people, oh, well, nobody used to bother, and that too is in English, or then we have to have it in Hindi or the local language. But then they said, well, we should have a graphic. So, as you know, for cancer, the symbol or the sign is more of a crab. But unfortunately, somebody in the translation decided to make a scorpion there, which is actually nothing to do with cancer at all. And people would put their hand to
So
that.
that
And
was
that
that
time we
has.
had about 20% or maybe 10% of the pack, when rules really say should be at least 80%. And then about 10 years or a little more, they had 85%. So one side of the pack was practically full. And then they came up with the rather gory signs of throat cancer and oral cancer. And it was badly printed. And many manufacturers, especially in chewing or smokeless tobacco, never even bothered to get them properly. So it was a big red and black smudge. So now the government has said, well, we have to have it clear, and they rotated the warnings. As a matter of fact, now the warnings are due for renewal because people have got tired of seeing the same warning every time, and it has lost most of its utility, which I'm sure the government will be coming up sooner or later. So while in other countries you find that not only the warning, there actually a science behind this. There are psychologists who look at what warning they should be given. So sometimes they look at just scaring the person regarding cancer. Somebody talks about chronic lung disease. Somebody talks about how much money you will save. Somebody talks about how when you don't smoke, your family and your friends and your neighbor do not have secondhand smoking. There are whole books have been written about this. So I personally feel they definitely, many countries already have these warnings, and the US being obviously a very, very, their alcohol consumption is much higher than India. And alcohol is considered quite normal over, even in a family having a dinner, they would normally have wine or beer. So it is considered very, very prevalent. So having this warning will not harm, although it could be argued that having a warning will not completely stop people from having alcohol. That's not going to happen. But
That's
even
very
baby
important.
steps, it cannot harm at all.
Yeah,
I hope
very
that
insightful.
answers your question.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah, it definitely does. So before we wrap up this very important discussion, I would like both of you to share quick tips on, how to avoid the risks of various types of cancers. If you could quickly, summarize for our viewers. Dr. Raj Purohit, would you like to start?
Okay, yeah. So, to be very quickly, we understand that cancer is the multifactorial pathogenesis. That means multiple factors are responsible for various different types of cancer. So, some of them are preventable, and you'll be very surprised that in India, the preventable cancers are tobacco-related cancers. And if tobacco is not accepted in the lifestyle, almost 40% of men's cancer will cease to be in existence. So it's a very big number. And what I would say that tobacco along with alcohol, so alcohol also leads to more harmful effect of tobacco, especially in the head and neck cancer areas, in the stomach and the esophagus. So these two became double menace. So if I have to roughly give a figure, around 15 to 20% additional cancers would actually be because of alcohol. So if in men I have to talk about tobacco and alcohol per se, if these two are curbed or they are publicly looked down upon and people actually tend to change their behaviors and habit, that could actually lead to actual decrease of around 40 to 50% of cancers in men. In women also, both of these have been concerning now because especially women in urban areas are now also getting the same culture as men were previously thought to be. And there's a pub culture, there's a lot of drink and dine culture now coming up in India, especially in the urban areas, which is a real concern because cancer was never a big disease 5 decades back in India, but now it is almost equivalent to Western peers. So it's a lifestyle disease. So these two things I like to put this message that alcohol and tobacco together do much more harm than single agents, but both of them are harmful and they're not good for health. So these are the only two things I like to put on as my message.
Yeah, Dr. Mehrotra, we would also like to hear you
Right.
on this.
In addition, of course, tobacco number one and alcohol number three. Other preventable causes include obesity. So, and obesity, as you know, India has a double problem. We have undernutrition and we have overnutrition. So, of the killers, as far as lifestyle is concerned, it is tobacco, obesity, and alcohol in that order. If you look at the amount of alcohol, of course, as compared to the West, it is relatively low. But when you compare to our neighboring countries, as I mentioned, the figures, we are a little more than about 5.5 liters as compared to 4.5. So the amount is increased. When you look at the Northeast, when you look at the southern states, you look at Punjab. I mean, and right here where we are sitting in Delhi, I mean, it is in many of the cities, alcohol shops are owned by, in many of the states, because it's a state subject, many of the alcohol vending is owned by the government. And in some places it is a private. So even in the night at 9 o'clock, or if you are in Gurgaon, you're probably at midnight, you can call up somebody and you can get it supplied. So obviously this is a serious problem. In addition to these three, the other areas where we can be preventing cancer is, of course, getting vaccines. And many of your viewers may be surprised. There are existing cancer vaccines, including hepatitis B for liver cancer, and of course human papilloma virus, which now is commercially available, and hopefully it will be available from the government for cervical cancer. And this HPV vaccine can also be used, is also useful for some oral cancers, anal, penile. There are about 6 different cancers where HPV vaccine comes in useful. Many people find it very difficult to understand how can we have a vaccine. You have a vaccine for COVID, but never heard of a vaccine for cancer. In addition, avoiding strong sunlight for light-skinned people, although we overall have a strong melanin protection, but then there are light-skinned people here. So avoiding sunlight exposure for too long can also be helpful to prevent from skin cancers. But I think if we look at these 5 or 6 specific areas, in addition to what was talked by my colleague, 60% of cancers actually in this country are preventable. Of course, by and large, the vast majority is tobacco, not only smoking, but also non-smoking, which, in our part of the world, non-smoking is actually 70 to 80%. Smoking is just about 20%, whether cigarettes and BDs. So maybe we can have a talk about this at some later date. But as far as alcohol is concerned, this is something which is, there is no safe limit, number one. Number two, it causes not only cancer, but a variety of other disorders, including liver and variety, and also makes the person obese. And that way, that individual is prone to developing a variety of other disorders, including joint problems, because that body is not meant to take up so much of weight. And also it causes osteoporosis, so a person may fall and break the bones, and you know what that happens, especially in the elderly. When they break a bone, that actually is a harbinger of death quite often. So I can go on for hours and hours talking about this, but I think as a take-home message, that should be more than adequate.
With those useful tips, we come to the end of the discussion. I really appreciate Dr. Mehrotra and Dr. Raj Purohit